everyone, and welcome once again to Geeks Not Nerds, the podcast. I'm Captain Logan.
And I am Vince.
Vince, today we're going to talk about movies.
I like movies. I see them quite often.
Today we're going to talk about the relationship that the studio who makes a movie has with the other people who make the film, with the actual creators of the film. And the question is, just how much creative control should a studio have over a project? And not just movies, but we can certainly go into television and other sorts of things too. I think this affects every creative outlet.
Mm-hmm. In regards to the relationship between them, I'd say dinner first and never kiss on the first date. Oh, studio. Oh, movie.
I think a lot of people, when they think about this sort of thing, immediately think, well, you need to give the creator as much control as possible. Mm-hmm. There certainly is a place for the studio, but that's mostly just to get people to buy the thing. Mm-hmm. Most people would probably tell you, based on projects that went south because it looked like the studio had too much control, that if they had just let the director and the writer and the producers, and sometimes producers can be a problem too, mm-hmm. But if they just let the people who were actually making the film make it and not put so many guidelines on them of this is what has to be in this film and this is who it has to be made for, then maybe it would sell better.
Yeah, the concept of too many cooks spoil the soup or whatever it is, spoil the dish.
Yeah, absolutely.
So that makes sense to me in a way,
mm-hmm.
because, and I'll cite this little story. I have a friend who's really into Aliens and Predator and things like that. And for Aliens 2, James Cameron, it was Cameron, right, for Aliens 2?
I think so.
If I'm wrong, whatever. I'm pretty certain it was Cameron. Yes, it was Cameron. So here's the deal. In Aliens 2, they were talking... In Aliens, they were talking about, we're going to have to figure out how to get this effect to work. The aliens have to run on the ceiling. It's going to cost a whole boatload of money, and you're going to have to spend a whole lot of time letting me just completely run over your set and make this possible. And James Cameron looked up and looked down and said, you realize that the ceiling and the floor look exactly the same? And they said, what are you getting at? He flipped the camera upside down and had the aliens crawl on the floor. Looked like they were walking on the ceiling. So in that way, having a studio jump in there and say, well, this is your special effects guy, he's the one that gets to say this, and we want this to happen, instantly makes it more bureaucratic and more problematic.
It sounds like all the money that we're always told that the government wastes every year.
It's all the money that everybody wastes every year. What are you doing watching Twilight? Stop that. Quit spending money on that. But...
it reminds me of another story. It reminds me a little bit of Stan Lee, who always said that that he hated being the president of Marvel. When he was at the top and not actually creating, but just having to do the business stuff. He said he really hated that because he wasn't a business guy. He was a creator. He was a writer, and here he was doing all the bureaucratic stuff. He said there's got to be someone who can do this better than I can.
That's interesting, because you would think that the guy who needs to be in a suit, who makes those decisions, would be a creator, would be an idea guy.
Yeah, but a lot of times that's not the person who has business sense. Now, it isn't always, and I think that this is usually the reason that it's not that kind of person, right? Mm-hmm. Where the person that actually is in charge of putting the stuff out has to have business sense. They have to know how to sell things. They have to be able to look at numbers and make overhead, and that's an analytical sort of thing. You've got the analytical brain and the creative brain don't always mix.
Well, to that I'll say this: Daredevil's cut down to sell it better because of time.
Right.
However, the movie, the uncut movie, is
suffers
better
a lot
than the cut movie.
Yeah, the cut movie suffers a lot because of that. Right.
So if somebody had stepped into Nolan's feature and said, "Hey, we want you to cut parts out of this," Nolan would have, I don't know, maybe divorced himself from the project. Hey, who knows?
Sure.
But the problem becomes that when the guy in the suit has no creative sense, then he's trying to make a commercial out of something that is otherwise a creative project.
That's exactly my point, is that he shouldn't necessarily be able to get his hands into what the actual piece is. He should just sell it for what it is.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense to me. I mean, I do think there is some commercial like at the conceptualizing basis of this movie or comic book or whatever, where people sit down and say, we're about to make a collaborative project, which is a film. You know, you have a bunch of people making a movie.
Absolutely.
And they say, what do we want? Well, the studio says, we want this, 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 and this. Now you go make these things. Make it work. Now, I would say that a studio is allowed to do that. Because they're giving you money.
Yeah, well, and I mean, it depends on whether or not it makes sense and if it works, because sometimes it does and sometimes it doesn't. But if it's Spider-Man 3, it doesn't.
Yeah, true. Good
you know,
point.
if they say, well, we want you to put Venom in there when you've already got this whole thing put together. But I think it also depends on what stage the project's at.
You know, Venom would have worked had they just set it up for the next movie.
Yeah.
Like, Venom's in this movie, but he's not going to be a major player.
Well, and that's why it just gets sometimes more complicated than, the big bosses on high are making crazy, out there, decisions, and they're just doing it arbitrarily. You know what I mean? Like, it gets more complicated than that because if I know the story right, they had thought about making it 2 movies. And it wasn't the studio that decided not to. It was Raimi, I think. I don't know if I'm right about that. But so my point is that the studio wasn't the only thing at fault there.
Yeah. You know, the studio has a good point. A lot of fans wanted to see Venom. Therefore, it's a terrific marketing decision to say, hey, guys, let's stick Venom in there. Or at least...
And if there's actually a story there, like, everybody wins. Because, you can still make a good movie and, your fans aren't going to complain necessarily because apparently a lot of them want that character.
I mean, there's no problem with it, in my opinion, to want to make something marketable, because otherwise, I mean, look at a lot of art house pictures, which may or may not be good. Not that all of them are. A lot of them are all definitely art house pictures, therefore have a certain kind of style to them,
right?
And a low budgetness that makes them charming, and some people appreciate it for that. But that is strictly creator owned and have no answerability to anybody. So therefore, you have something that could be incredibly unrefined. Now, some people like that, having something that's unrefined.
Right.
But having something that has no...
That's not mass marketable, though.
Yeah, you can't sell something like that to an entire group of people who have been I'm not sure, I don't want to say spoiled, but that's a word I'm going to use, who are desensitized to where they'll judge something more harshly because it doesn't have a large budget. And I'm not saying that's good or bad either way. All I'm saying is that people in a marketing position, people who wear the suits in a business.
Yeah, I wouldn't say desensitized so much as trained. You know what I mean? Like throughout our lives, those of us that like mainstream popular entertainment have sort of been trained to, I don't want to say to necessarily like certain things, but maybe, you know what I mean? Like you said, there's certain things that we're used to seeing. If something is a summer blockbuster, we want it to be a roller coaster.
Yeah, and
I also want it to be a good movie, but sometimes it's not going to be real deep when it's also a roller coaster.
There are certainly things that are available to the audience that, like for example, Gran Torino. It was marketed as if it was going to be this new Clint Eastwood, Dirty Harry-ish type of movie, and it wasn't. It was very much so kind of a touching, drama-esque type of movie. There were certainly some gunplay and things like that, but that's where I think marketing can kind of shoot itself in the foot. It wants people to come see the new Clint Eastwood movie, and who's going to be interested to see Clint Eastwood? The guys who want to see the gunplay.
Yeah.
So they get people to come to a theater and say, oh, this is not exactly what I thought it would be.
Yeah, that gets back into our old trailer discussion about how things get marketed a certain way, regardless if that's what they actually are, and then viewers feel like they've been kind of screwed around with a little bit, and that's not fair. So like I said, I mean, I do think that the head honchos at the top are responsible for making sure that they get projects going that will make money, and B, that they can actually sell the things, but C, not necessarily that they're made in a particular way. I think the choice of project is probably on their like, on their level, that's probably the most important thing.
Like this Clint Eastwood movie.
What is the project that we're making?
I'm kind of hung up on this Clint Eastwood movie, apparently. This movie, Gran Torino, you know Clint Eastwood's going to sell. So they're going to let him make whatever movie he wants to make. But they can't sell it in the way that they would necessarily sell it. Like Black Swan, even. I know that's not Clint Eastwood. But it was very much so a psychological, strange movie. I haven't seen it, but I'm aware of these issues. And how did they sell the movie initially? Like it was some dance movie.
Yeah.
Like it was just going to be a ballet movie.
Mm-hmm.
And it'd be like trying to sell The Replacements as if it was just watching a football game. So, see, the trouble is that if we were to let the studio make Gran Torino, it would have probably turned into what they marketed it as.
Right.
So therefore, because they know who they could get to go see this movie.
Mm-hmm.
Black Swan, who do we get to see a dance movie? Well, even though it's got some very strange, scary elements to this, we're not going to get that strange, scary crowd because they're going to be freaked out by all the more maybe feminine, call it what you will, elements to this movie.
You know, that's a really good point. What you and I find ourselves a lot saying things like oversimplifying things and saying, "Why can't you just make a good movie?"
Mm-hmm.
But then we're also the consumers who may or may not actually go to that movie.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. How many times have you been told about brilliant movies that you had no interest in? And when you finally said, okay, fine, you sat down and watched it, it was like the most brilliant thing you ever saw, and you were kicking yourself in the face for not going in the first place.
Mm-hmm.
I've had this lots of times.
So, we have a movie. Okay, Black Swan. We're going to assume it's a good movie. I haven't seen it. I assume you haven't seen it either.
Mm-hmm.
So, it's a good movie. Marketing is an issue for this thing. And the only reason that people are going to see it now is because it's winning a bunch of awards.
Yeah, right. Isn't that always the way?
Yeah. So, what we have here is a snafu in the system.
Yep, that's it.
We have a good movie. Somebody went out there and made a good movie that is just almost nearly impossible to market. So therefore...
Again, we don't know because we haven't seen it. But yeah, but sure. Yeah.
So we
For the sake of argument, yes.
I'm just thinking out, just thinking out loud. So the problem is that we have a consumer base who wants good stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But they want it to be sold to them, and they don't realize it.
That's it. Yeah, it's entirely subconscious. Where we definitely sit there, you and I both. I mean, we definitely will watch trailers, and we like to talk about how we're not going to assume anything about a movie from a trailer, but the trailer is still going to help us decide whether or not to go see it.
Mm-hmm. Like, I'll say
because
this,
how else are you going to know? Except for word of mouth, or just reading a list of movies online, or whatever, or seeing posters and ads across websites or whatever.
Transformers and Batman Dark Knight are sold to largely the same groups of people. People who like action movies, people who want to have that roller coaster effect. The summer movie crowd.
But one is smart and one is not.
So, and the people who go see Transformers and enjoy Transformers are likely to go see Dark Knight and enjoy Dark Knight and recognize Dark Knight as the better movie.
Okay. Sure.
So therefore, what I'm saying here is that our consumer base knows what is easily marketed to in certain ways. Mm-hmm. So they'll go see these things. But they're not unsavvy enough. They are, or rather to say, they are savvy enough to figure out what is good. So therefore, we have a good movie. And
they're both marketed kind of the same way.
Yeah. So
you're saying that marketing things on the big, exciting, flashy stuff that gets you into the theater is not necessarily a bad thing because that's the thing that gets us there.
You see, yeah,
is that what
true.
You're saying?
I am saying that to some extent, but the problem therein lies, whatever, that when you get to the movie theater and it's not the experience that you expected it to be, then you're disappointed. Even if it was a good movie, you may not be able to let yourself recognize that it is a good movie, whether you're capable of it or not, because you already had this idea in your mind that it was going to be a certain way.
Last night I went and saw a movie that wasn't particularly great called The Right, which I was told was a horror movie that was maybe going to be kind of another ripoff of The Exorcist. And I only went because someone wanted to go, so I went. And I I had a different experience than I thought I would. I thought it was going to be like one of those silly horror movies that I was just going to laugh at the whole time, and I'll go do that, sure. That can be fun, but it wasn't. It was kind of boring, and so I expected this this really gory kind of fast-paced horror film, and what I got was kind of a draggy movie, but it was trying really hard to have a good character arc. Like it was trying to be very very character based, and I didn't even see trailers for it, but just having been told one or two things about it, I had probably a different experience than I would have if I'd been prepared for it. Mm-hmm. I had a hard time staying awake. I think partially because I just didn't. Well, I was also drinking alcohol, but I think and it was at a movie theater where you can drink alcohol. But anyway,
but you call that the booze cinema?
No. It was the Fork and Screen at the AMC, and they have drinks there. And I had a rather marvelous strawberry. What was it?
Daiquiri?
But no, it was anyway, I don't remember what it was. Margarita. It was a strawberry margarita. It was really good.
I've never had one of those.
Anyway.
I drink them twice, generally scotch.
Yeah, it was like the biggest strawberry margarita I've ever... Well, I like really fruity drinks. Anyway.
There's nothing wrong with... Hey, I like high C and stuff like that.
But alcohol makes me kind of sleepy, so I was a little sleepy while I was watching it. But anyway, my point in all this is that I wasn't prepared for the experience. Because... my guess is that it was marketed toward the people who like to go see big flashy slasher pics or gory horror films.
I've seen some of the previews. I haven't seen the ride. Interestingly enough, you have seen the movie and none of the previews. I've seen a bunch of the previews and none of the movie.
Right.
So,
but how do they market it?
It felt like to me they're trying to market it as sort of this religious psychological horror film.
Oh, okay. Because that's kind of what it was.
And
except it moved really slow.
You see, the movie or you are right in a sense though that it was marketed to people as if it was going to be extremely fast paced, as if it was going to be this high tension, who knows what's going to happen type of movie.
Well, I think that you're rarely going to have a trailer where you can tell that it's going to be this really really slow moving kind of movie. Something I wanted to touch on is that I think it's important. It's tough because I think it's important for studios to take risks sometimes, and a lot of the times these days they don't, which is a lot of the reason that you get so many remakes and so many movies based on old TV shows and things like that, and not a lot of original projects, because it's gotten to the point where market recognition is really 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 important, where the studios expect people will go see something just because they've heard of it. It worked with Green Hornet. You know what I mean? There's not even a lot of Green Hornet fans, but a bunch of people have heard of Green Hornet. But what do they know about Green Hornet? Kato, and that's what they know. But people would go because it was something they'd heard of, even if they didn't know anything about it. It's really interesting how that happens. Well, I wanted to mention two different projects, both where risks were taken. One that worked and one that didn't. The first is Batman the Animated Series, where they let Bruce Timm and his team, and they talk about this in their commentaries on various episodes in the box sets, which I really recommend watching those because it's quite an education. They talk a lot about how the Warner Brothers really just kind of gave them the reins and let them do pretty much whatever they wanted to. They would look at shows after they made them, and sometimes they'd say, oh, that's a little too rough for kids. You need to change this part, or you can't get away with this little blood you showed there, or this little bit of language or something. But for the most part, they didn't say your show has to be like this, and They took a risk in the sense that they let them make a really smart show that didn't feel like a kiddie cartoon show, and that's why they got a full orchestra and things like that, where they were able to make it in a really adult way because the studio took a chance. Now, having said that, the movie would have never been, or the series wouldn't have gotten made had Tim Burton's movie not done gangbusters. Mm-hmm. So they took a risk in the way they made the show, but something else had to be successful before it happened. Now, that show was extremely successful, and a lot of people will tell you that, and we talk about this a lot. A lot of people will tell you that it's the best animated series ever made.
I just told somebody yesterday that was my favorite TV show that's come out ever.
And it wouldn't have been as smart of a show had the studio gotten their fingers too much in it, and they knew that. Bruce Timm talks a lot about how lucky they got that they were trusted as well as they were. That it just never happens in kids TV or primetime TV. And then look at another project where a studio took a chance. UHF.
Oh yeah.
We were talking about UHF earlier. UHF, from what I've read, was a lot of the reason that the distributor or the studio that made it went under. That was Orion, and for whatever reason, I guess they thought that Weird Al could save their company, basically, because he was kind of a hot thing at the moment, and so he wanted to make his movie. Well, that was kind of a risk, and as far as I can tell watching UHF, I don't think they gave them a lot of mandates. I mean, it looks like the movie Weird Al wanted to make, you know what I mean?
He is called Weird Al.
Yeah, I mean, like the pacing is kind of wonky and everywhere, and it's got some weird jokes that don't necessarily quite work, and I mean, it's just like, you know, it's a really odd movie, and it doesn't feel like anybody really, you know, had their hands in it. And that backfired and didn't work. So my point is, you never know. You know, I think this is kind of an impossible question. How far should the studio be involved? I don't know. But I think the most important thing first is you have to pick a project that people are going to want to see. And I mean, even if it seems like a risk, well, we can't be entirely sure. Back to the Future is a really good example. There's a really good shot that people were going to want to go see that movie, but it could have gone either way. It could have bombed or it could have done gangbusters. They didn't know. All they knew is that they had a really cool concept on their hands, so they made it.
Exactly. Well, here's something that I think is worth saying. Ghostbusters. I think I may have brought this up in the podcast before. But Ghostbusters, I think, turned out good because of the studio. Because the studio got involved in the creative process. Because what Dan Aykroyd had originally conceptualized with this movie is that it would be a group of ghost catchers who travel through time, trying to catch ghosts. And that sounds absurd. And the studio said, through time? Why not just set it in New York? Like, why do they have to have all these special bells and whistles? Why don't they just have the means to catch the ghosts and be in a familiar setting? Make the characters relatable. And they said, okay. And they made what is arguably one of the greatest geek movies, just greatest, watchable movies for anybody.
Yeah, because the thing is, it's not fair to just assume that the dude in the suit knows nothing about storytelling.
Yeah. You know,
he might know enough to have a sense of what, you know. Maybe he watches movies. What a concept, right? You know, maybe he goes, oh, people might enjoy this in a movie, and of course he may know nothing at all. But I mean, like, I don't know. You have to take it on a case by case basis. You have to know who the dude is at the top, and if the guy is totally no nonsense, he doesn't know anything about entertainment, but he knows how to get money into the pockets of the people making the movies, then he needs to just be a facilitator. But, you know, if he has a good idea here or there, you know, he should be involved. It just depends.
And to be fair, this is a very cutthroat market. Not that I'm necessarily involved in it, but I'm aware.
It is, yeah.
You screw up once,
especially now.
I mean, if you're one of these money making guys, one of these suits, and you screw up once, you're out. I mean, you really don't get a second chance. So it makes sense to me why these people would be so concerned about what projects get greenlit and how these projects are conducted.
Yeah, I think a lot of us fans give a lot of those kind of people a lot of crap because we're like, you know, you guys are really like lowering the bar. You're kind of degenerating our culture, et cetera, and like you know, that's true to a large degree if you look at the kinds of things that are being made and you know what mainstream cinema has kind of become, and TV also, and then at the same time they're also trying to keep a job and that kind of thing. I mean, sure, you know, maybe they're making a lot of money, maybe they're getting rich, but you got to realize that they're not necessarily going to always be there, and that money that they made isn't going to last forever. That's the thing. If you don't, and even being an actor, I mean, like, you know, even if you make it big and you're great for one movie, if you totally bomb in the next one and people don't hire you again, okay, you got all that money from that last movie, but it's not going to last forever. What if you never work again?
Yeah.
It's hard.
I think that we as fans tend to fall into this us versus them mentality of we want the creative thing, So we'll fall into the category of sympathizing with the actors, the director, and the writers. And
why aren't you making art?
Yeah.
Make art.
And then we'll look at the studio as if it's this big oppressive whole, as opposed to a system of safe. What do you call that? Well, as opposed to a system of just assurances that you try not to go bankrupt. So you have your people who make your art, and then you have your people that make sure that art will sell. And those people aren't necessarily at the top. Just because you're in a suit doesn't mean that you're the big decision maker. It means you're making some of the small decisions for the people at the top. Mm-hmm. And the people at the top are the ones who fund the projects, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they're involved with the projects.
Right.
So we have a bunch of people who don't necessarily know what they're doing and are too scared to let things go through that won't sell. Mm-hmm. So, yeah. Try putting your kids through college if you get fired. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, it's just I guess what I'm saying is it's complicated. It's not that it's like with anything. It's not that like corruption and things like that don't happen in anything. You know, so it's not like there aren't some people who certainly couldn't have, who certainly could have, more standards for entertainment than they do, but they're just looking at their bottom line. Yeah, certainly that happens. But I think there's times where it's a tough call between, making money and making art.
You know what I think these studios need? They need a marketing guy who knows the movies, and not necessarily to say that one guy who knows everything and can sell movies and is this terrific Renaissance man and this mythical person should be at every studio. I'm saying that we should have a group, like a team of people that can greenlight movies. We need somebody, and I know I'm going entirely idealistic here. But,
yeah, sure. In a perfect world, this is what we'd have.
In a perfect world, we would have somebody who would say, this is how we fund the project, and we would have somebody who would say, this is how we can sell the project. And they would work together to create something that would be considering the audience's needs. So your marketing people wouldn't say, okay, how can we get them in this room? It would be more like, how can we get them into this room so that they can see a movie that they want to see? As opposed to a movie that we want them to see. Mm-hmm. So, because that's your bottom line, is getting butts in the seats.
Yeah. Well, they should hire us.
Yeah. There we go. That's our job, guys. Here we are.
So we're going to tell you what movies to watch. Don't watch that movie I watched yesterday. So let's go ahead and go to rants.
All right.
Today, rants is going to be a little bit weird and different because we're both going to be ranting about kind of the same thing, but different topics on the same thing. And Vince, why don't you start?
All right. So I've been noticing with Netflix commercials, they're becoming a little more aggressive. I just saw some kid. I just saw a Netflix commercial where this kid orders around people in a movie, and I understand it's supposed to be funny that we have this kid being forceful towards adults, but in my mind, it's becoming this consumer culture, and it's like these spoiled people expecting what they want, as if they have a right to it, and I find that insulting in some way. That Mr. Moviegoer would stand up and say, "It's mine, give it to me." And then they stick the disc into the player forcefully and say, "Dance around, monkeys." Because that's how we get, ignorant people doing that create stuff that's not art. So.
Well, yeah, there's that.
And, I don't know. And also,
it's maybe that's just not the message we should be.
Yeah, it's this degeneration. I mean, shouldn't you be thankful that certain things exist? I mean, you see a bad movie on Netflix, cool. I mean, you had the chance to see a movie on your computer or on your Wii, or you had it sent to your house. And I understand that they're trying to sell this point that you have the power, you make the decision, and you don't have to go to the store to get it. It's at your fingertips.
Well, yeah, and the best thing about instant streaming is that, I'll try stuff I never would have tried because I would have had to waste the time and money to go out and get it. Whereas, like, I don't remember what the movie was, but my wife and I did this just last week. We started watching a comedy. I can't remember what it was. It was a recent comedy with Christopher Walken, of all people. But we watched the first, 20 minutes, and it was really boring. Like, it wasn't funny. We weren't liking it. So we stopped it, and we went to another movie. We ended up watching instead My Cousin Vinny, which we'd never seen, which was really great.
I love that movie.
we just loved it. And we're really glad we watched it. But anyway, what was cool about it is, we started watching a movie, and we stopped. And we didn't have to, take it back to the store or waste any money, that kind of thing. So
see, I support these things, but I just worry at times that things like what an existential thing to worry about.
No, absolutely, I worry about the same thing. I agree with you.
I just worried that we're producing a culture of spoiled brats.
Fair enough.
So, not to say that everybody who gets their stuff instantly is spoiled. It's just something that could happen.
We need to not take it for granted.
Yeah,
and that's the most important
thing.
We need. I think it's going to be really important for upcoming generations to know just how good they have it with that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's really important. Well, Vince, my rant is also about Netflix, and my rant is that with streaming. I wish they would be slightly less arbitrary about what things they put on streaming. Now, I'm not going to complain about the selections because there's a lot of great stuff that ends up getting put up. Thank God for Stars Play, but because a lot of the best stuff that ends up going up is because they're affiliated with Stars Play. So you get the Stars Play stuff. But anyway, and there's a lot of good TV and stuff like that. What's happening with some movies is not happening with TV, which is really good because that would be irritating. But I'm finding every now and again they'll have a sequel to something available, but not the first one.
That's annoying.
I think that's irritating. So right now they have Blade 2 available for streaming, but not the first Blade. Now, when I noticed that they had that up, because here pretty soon I'm going to do that movie Blade 2 for Superhero Rewind, and when I noticed it was there. I decided to try to see if they had the first one for streaming because my wife was interested in seeing it. She hasn't seen it yet. So I thought we'd watch that and then we'd watch Blade 2 together so I could do the rewind on it. And I went in and was surprised to find that it wasn't available. I was like, well, but you have the sequel. It's so weird. I'm not saying they have to have every movie in a franchise just because the franchise is out. I do think that they should have every season of a TV show. Mm-hmm. Or at least they shouldn't have season 2 of a TV show.
I wonder how common it is for people to just watch the sequel with no regard for the first one. I wonder how important it is to people.
I don't do that.
Because I couldn't read issue 3 out of a 5-issue story arc to start. I just wouldn't do it.
I mean, it's a foreign idea to me. I've heard so many people when a new movie comes out that's a sequel say, ask people who saw it do I need to see the first one to get it? That's such a foreign idea to me because even if they're separate enough that you don't have to see the first one to enjoy the second one, I don't know why you would want to do that. I don't know. I mean, unless it's just an entirely different thing with a totally different cast, like Home Alone 3. But I just don't know why you'd necessarily do that because you just know that there's going to be enough, mentions of things from the first film that you're going to miss something, even if it's not necessary.
I think the assumption is that people will watch these things just for the thrill and don't necessarily care about continuity. They just want to see some people get hit or some people kissing or something like that. Yeah,
I don't know. Maybe it's just because I watch so much stuff, but I don't like missing things.
Yeah, maybe.
And I especially, and maybe this is just a weird it's just a weird Captain Logan thing, but I don't like being in a movie theater. Seeing something in a series where there have been movies before and knowing there are people around me that are going to get references that I don't get. I just don't like that. It bugs me. Maybe it shouldn't, but it kind of bugs me.
Sounds like insecurity there, Cap.
I know that's what it sounds like. That's why I said maybe it's just a weird Captain Logan thing, but it's just sort of I don't like looking around and going, oh, those people are laughing. I have no idea what they're laughing at. That irritates me.
Well, no, that makes sense because you feel like you're missing out.
Yeah.
Man, I could have had what they're having right now. I just didn't do the homework essentially.
Yeah, I'm I could have just Netflixed that this afternoon and watched it. Why didn't I do that?
It's like going to class and then going to a test and or not going to class and then having the test and oh crap, they talked about this last Tuesday.
I also find it irritating when people like a sequel so much better than the movie that especially if it's like the sequel to immediately preceding the first one,
I've done that.
or immediately coming after the first one. But what's annoying is when like that's the only one they want to watch, and they never go back and watch the first one. So like growing up, my mom, I don't know why I keep bringing this franchise up, but when I was growing up, my mom constantly Back to the Future 3, constantly.
The Western one?
Yes.
She's weird.
I know! But see, my wife, that's her favorite too, and I just think it's strange, because the thing is, I always liked Back to the Future 2 a lot, and my mom hated it and wouldn't own it, so she had Back to the Future 1 and Back to the Future 3, and she wouldn't own the second one.
See, I like Back to the Future 1.
Isn't that strange?
I don't necessarily need the other two.
Yeah, but that's the thing. Well, but see, that's fair, because it stands on its own, and there's a lot of people like that with The Matrix for obvious reasons. And so, like growing up, I saw that movie so many times I couldn't remember what happened in the first one. Mm-hmm. I got to where I couldn't even figure out why they were in the 1800s. I was like, or how like the whole thing worked at the beginning with the 50s. I was like, well, if they're in the 1800s, then how come he's watching Howdy Doody time? Like, I got to the point where I just could not remember what was going on. Well, but I'm talking when I was like 8, but anyway.
For me,
well, I was going to say, what was the one you were thinking of?
Clerks 2.
Oh, really?
I just like Clerks 2 so much more than Clerks 1.
Yeah, but does the first one inform it that much?
Well, it introduces you to the characters.
Okay.
I mean, if you haven't seen Clerks 1 and you really... What I'm trying to say is that the characters aren't necessarily sympathetic unless you've seen Clerks 1.
Oh, okay.
And the characters in Clerks 1 aren't necessarily sympathetic, but it makes you sympathize with their existence rather than who they are. So yeah, there is a bit of a continuity. Not extreme, but it's there.
Well, Vince, we're all out of time.
Aww.
But thanks to everybody for listening to Geeks Not Nerds, the podcast, and we'll have another podcast for you next week. I'm Captain Logan.
And I'm Vince.
See you next time.